What's your favorite part of being an herbalist and your big why that keeps you learning and growing? Great question. I think that my favorite part about being an herbalist is those moments when people really, whether I'm teaching or I'm in clinic, where people really feel that sort of waking up to the personhood of plants, like the way that it shifts from being about how the plants can help them or can be a healing sort of material, and moves much more towards like they're these beings that are actually part of our ecology, that have their own history of life here on this planet. They're older than we are evolutionarily, and that there's so much that we don't know about them. We talk a lot as herbalists about like the wisdom of plants, which I really deeply believe in on a spiritual level and on a philosophical level, but also really on a biological level. There's incredible wisdom in the way that their chemistry is able to interact for, to support its own, plant's own sort of life processes, but also able to interact with other species systems in the ways that we see it does for us and for other animals and insects and birds, etc., but also the ways they interact with each other. Just all the communication that happens that we don't fully understand yet, but we're starting to get a little bit of the glimpse, or at least science, so-called Western science, is really kind of starting to say like, oh, here's ways we can understand that in kind of our modern context. We also know there have been all kinds of ways that it's been understood by people over time, and herbalists have often held that knowledge and told those stories. And I love being able to be one of those people who's figuring out the best ways for each person to really hear the stories of plants, to like, is it through a scientific kind of like chemistry lens, pharmacology? Is it through a more spiritual kind of like energetic perspective? Is it as a relationship, like this plant is a person who has its own personality and their own purpose, and we get to interact with that in the same way we would with another human person. Whatever the language is, or whatever kind of the narrative that hooks people, I love when they finally get it and they're like, oh, this plant is my friend, or this plant is my teacher, or this plant is like my helper, or this plant is like holding me to account. I just think it's beautiful, and it's a way in which our kind of the overculture here, in North America, Turtle Island, is really missing. It's missing that sense of relationship and belongingness, and like really like being held by more than other humans, which even that we're really missing in a good way. We just lack a density of connection. And when we count only on people, which is so complicated for so many of us, then we end up feeling really isolated and alone. And if we just really tune our senses and our hearts and our minds to all the other beings, especially plant beings that we can connect to, the network gets real thick real fast. The connectivity gets so much more rich. There's so much more available to us to feel tethered and to feel belonging. I love that.